I welcome the opportunity to contribute to today's debate on this very important issue. Since the onset of this pandemic, it became quickly apparent that domestic violence services were under intense pressure. Safe Ireland recently published a new report entitled Tracking the Shadow Pandemic, which affirmed this. The report showed that a total of 3,450 women and 589 children who had never contacted a domestic violence service before looked for support and safety from abuse and coercive control during the first 6 months of COVID-19, from March till August. I also understand that recent figures released by your Department Minister show that there has been a 14% increase in the number of domestic abuse incidents reported to the Gardaí in 2020. In my own county of Cork, in the first 8 months of this year, there were 910 domestic violence cases reported in the City Division, Cork City Division. That's an 11% increase on the previous year. There were 448 cases reported in the Cork North Division. That's an increase of approximately 20%. And in the Cork West Division, an increase to 254 cases, which is nearly an increase of 42%. All those incidents, obviously, we don't have the year-end figures yet, and those figures, unfortunately, are likely to rise. The Director of Public Prosecutions has stated that there has been an 87% increase so far this year in the number of files submitted to her office related to domestic violence or the breach of a court order. Mary McDermott, CEO of Safe Ireland, highlighted the enormous strains that services throughout the country were under in the first lockdown, and unfortunately that has continued throughout lockdown too. She states, and I quote, "The study exposes yet again patterns of domestic violence heightened by this pandemic." She has also stated that on average there were 191 women and 288 children staying in domestic violence accommodation each month. It is my understanding that 1,351 requests were made for the refuge, or 7 requests per day, and these could not be met as there was no space. I know that the Government is committed to making domestic violence a priority. The Taoiseach has stated previously that funding would not and should not be an issue. However, I am concerned that the organisations on the ground, that none of this has been backed up by the resources and infrastructural modernisation that is needed. I would ask the Minister today to commit to providing the additional funding and those resources to ensure that victims and their children are supported. There is one other point that I would like to make. Safe Ireland were gravely disappointed with the lack of targeted provisions in Budget 2020 for women and children living with violence and abuse. I think as legislators this is something that we need to review next year, given the demand and strain on these services throughout the pandemic. I would like to take the opportunity to commend the dedication and commitment shown by organisations like Safe Ireland that have been operating under very difficult circumstances. As I have mentioned already, the refuges were inundated, but as the CEO of Safe stated, services worked creatively to find alternative accommodation in the community. They provide a very vital service, and this pandemic has highlighted the importance of the work that they do. In addition, great credit must be given to the Gardaí. Programmes like Operation Fuishiv have helped to protect the most vulnerable in our society. Finally, Minister, the programme for government contains a number of commitments in relation to domestic violence and sexual abuse. There are numerous commitments regarding the development of a third national strategy on domestic, sexual and gender-based violence, the conduct of an immediate audit to be concluded within 9 months of the formation of government, the implementation of a plan for future refuge space, and the publication of a review of domestic violence accommodation provision, and other aims such as to adopt and implement a comprehensive strategy to combat trafficking of women and girls. I would urge the Minister to take action on these immediately. Thanks, Cathaoirleach.